Hello and welcome back. In this video we're going to do a little repair to this Whirly gig. It's cracked in half and one of the wings is broken. This is a pretty old piece. It's been in my family for a while. I believe one of my relatives made it at one point. And you can see it was tried to repair it once at least in the past. So I'm going to fix it for good this time. I'm going to start by knocking off some of that old glue, cleaning up that surface a little bit, and then planing this side and the other two surfaces flat or somewhat flat so they can get a stronger glue joint. That lets that piece sit a little better. Now I'm marking for dowels, where I'll put two in. Just marking both sides of that piece so I can drill into opposing faces there. Now here's the dowel jig that I'm using. This one's by Rockler, and I'll put a link in the description for it. Pretty much drill two holes, one on each face that you want to join, and then put a floating dowel in between there. And that helps with alignment, keeping the two surfaces straight while that glue has a chance to set up. I'm doing the same thing on that other face, in those two locations. So I can put those two dowel pins in just like that. And it gives that a stronger joint for the glue to dry so it doesn't break along that seam again. Now for the glue up after that test fit, putting down some duct tape here on the bench just to avoid the jig getting stuck to the table there. When the glue leaks out onto that duct tape, it doesn't set like it does on wood, so you're able to pull it up or wipe it off a little easier than if it's a wood-to-wood contact. Putting enough glue on both surfaces there, I want enough squeeze out, and I want it to fill that slight gap that I'll have. Throw a couple small clamps on there just to pull it together tight. You can see that glue squeeze out there. There's quite a bit, so I mopped it up ahead of time just to avoid anything sticking to the table. And I throw one more clamp on right to the table just to keep it flat. And while I have it clamped down, I clean up that surface a little bit as it wasn't a perfectly aligned joint. So this is just using a plane to knock off that high spot in the middle, so that after I put some thick paint on, it'll blend right in and you'll never know the repair was made. I do a little bit of sanding of this off camera just to clean up that joint a little more. Now I have to take this apart. These two wings are held on with a bent rod that you're seeing me remove here. And that rod runs through all these pieces and links the two wings together so they move as one unit. So I just have to unbend that rod so I'm able to remove one half and then the other. Now I'm trimming off this broken part of the wing here. It's recessed into the housing there. So I'm trying to remove as little of the material as possible just so I can pull out that broken chunk. Now I'm laying out the new wing here. So I'm using a piece of shim stock and making some rough tracing on there just to give me an idea of the shape I'm going for with the wing. rough trimming it to shape here, and I'm leaving a few inches extra on the end there that I have something to grab to when I'm sanding it. That way I'm not super close to the sander. It gives me a little safety, something to hold on to while I'm working. First I'm trying to get the piece down to width, which is about 1/8 of an inch or so. And there's a slight taper on it as it goes from the tip to the end. That was my limiting spot right there, was where it meets with the original piece. I actually over sanded, so I had to use some wedges here to keep it tight. But after paint, you'll never know that they're in there. Now I'm using some acrylic paint to somewhat match the color. I wasn't happy with how this yellow turned out, but it'll protect that surface and give it a few more years of life. The rest of the colors looked fine, just the yellow was a little lacking going over that old color. I kept a similar paint scheme. The only major difference was I did blue for the ocean as opposed to the green that it was. For time's sake, I'm just showing one of these sides, but I repeated the same process on the other side of the piece. Use some artistic detail there to add some white caps. Give it a little bit more depth than just the plain flat color. Now I'm making the stock that goes underneath the Whirly gig that allows it to spin. This was missing on the original piece, and this gives it some stability when it spins, that it has something to rotate in. It's similar to a bearing. I'm making this piece to fit a specific thing in my yard, so this is unique to me, but you can see the idea of what I'm doing to replicate it if you want to do this project at home. Now I'm drilling a through hole here. This will hold a little piece of pipe that will allow the Whirly gig to spin on. Marking my end there and cutting it off by hand. That's the final piece. Since it's purely mechanical, I didn't feel the need to sand it or do anything special with it. But I am installing this piece of pipe here, as I mentioned earlier. This allows that center spine on the Whirly gig to spin in, so it gives it a little bit freer motion. And then the outer housing goes in a pipe that I have set up in my yard. Painted that black, but just before final assembly here. I'm putting everything back together the way I found it. Putting that center rod back in with the little nail that was retaining it. The washers and arms, and then putting it back through the main unit to put everything back on the other side. Bending over that rod gently there, as you can see. Thanks for watching this video. If you liked it, please hit that thumbs up, and if you have any comments on what I'd like to do next, leave them down below as well. Thanks for watching.